Hello everyone. This video is a short introduction of the new rrControl version 9 interface and all the new features that we have implemented. This video will show you the new layout changes, the changes to the filter box, the job table, client table, new tabs that we have added, and changes to existing tabs. So let's start. First, we have new layout settings, so you can decrease or increase the size of fonts for the overall text and for the tables. So if you have a larger motor, a smaller motor, you can just change it. Then we have improved the layout preset. So if you're now going to change this layout, so save, it will ask you if it should update on all the other machines. So if you choose job table columns, then everyone who has chosen the default layout before will get the new job column settings that you have chosen. There's a new option for automatic updates. So if you have file servers that synchronize between different countries, it might be that images, preview images, or frame bars or log files are not yet available, and your file server takes time to copy newly created files to the other location. In this case, selecting a job would be very slow as Control has to wait for these images or log files to be copied. In this case, you can disable the settings and all files that have changed within the last minute will not be loaded by rrControl. So the frame bar, the preview images, then there's a new feature. Imagine you're working within Maya and you have a two monitor setup and you are waiting for some other job or for multiple jobs and want to take a look. So you have to switch between Control, Maya, and therefore we have a new shrink button, which displays the job table only of rrControl. You can change columns that are shown, so you can just show the columns you really need. The filter is the same as you have set before. So you only see, for example, I only want to see jobs that are rendering. Yep. And there you go. Of course, the shrink layout can have a different font size as well. Just change it in the layout menu and you can have a smaller table for the small view and a larger text font size for the main view. Next is the filter box. We have changed a little bit to the filter box. So you can choose if you want to see approved jobs only, if there are jobs that should not be approved. A user button, which quickly changes between you and everyone. The filter boxes, you can enter some letters to see only few jobs, or if you have a company with a lot of people in, like 50 people, you can just enter their name and see their jobs. The filter box includes multiple search words. So if I'm searching for short 10, oh, way too many. I'm only interested in dual, but I'm not interested in AOVs. So that's the changes to the filter box. The age filter has now way more options, so everything that was rendered since 1800 yesterday will be shown, or the last 3 hours, or since last Friday, only this week, since Monday, 2 weeks, 1 week. The filter box automatically switches between the 2 and 4 row layout depending on the size. Now to the changes of the job table. It looks almost the same. There's now a small number of errors. So you can see different errors, 13, 26, 36, how many errors happened at the job. Then there's a new comment. So you can please change this and that. Oh, this is saved within the job. If you just hover over, there are now 4 approvals in Wallrender because of the different types of approvals that have been used within Wallrender 8, but you have not been able to separate them. There's the approval after preview. There's the approval after all frames, and approval to allow the job for cloud rendering, and a custom approval. So what's the difference? The custom approval is just a checkbox, can be used for anything. A visual indicator for anything that you would like to have a mark on. For example, I have composed this shot or whatever. The other The other 3 approvals might not be used within Wallrender. It depends on your render farm and your job settings. For example, if you don't render on the cloud, the checkbox approve for cloud render makes no sense, and you can use it for your custom settings. The approval after preview and approval after frames, they depend if you have set the job option approve after preview or approve after frames done. If you have not set this job option, these approvals can be used as a custom approval for anything that you like. If you have enabled after preview, we'll wait after these preview frames for you to approve the job. Otherwise, the job will not continue. The frames done approval, the job will wait after all frames have been rendered. Then you have to approve it while render executes the post-render scripts and sets the job to finished. So I'm just removing all comments. Okay. The last change of the job table. This is more a visual feature. Imagine you have some mantra simulations, geo simulations, and you have mantra jobs waiting for them. And I submit them. Then I get 4 jobs, but you sometimes don't know why a job is waiting. So you just see wait for two jobs. And now if you select the job, you will see, okay, this job is waiting for that job, and that job is waiting for these jobs. They're slightly colored in a little blue, so you always know which job another job depends on. So if we sorted the table, it doesn't matter. You still see this job depends on these jobs. Okay, now the client table. There are some new columns. There's a column for render applications. You can see which render application is installed on a client. If a client is rendering, you can right click and view the current render log of the client. The GPU usage, GPU temperature, and GPU memory available are already available in Render 8, but I just mentioned them in case you haven't noticed them. And there's a new column for network traffic. It's a summed network traffic of in and out data transfers. You can see this machine is loading currently 20 megabytes per second, or writing 20 megabytes per second. This one is 19 megabytes per second. And there's new efficiency rate, aborted and failed column. There's the column. The efficiency rate is the percentage of the succeeded jobs compared to the failed and aborted clients. You can see the jobs that have run out within the last 3 hours, 8 hours, the last day, or the last 3 days. As you can see, this client had a success rate of 96%, 27 jobs completed, and 1 was aborted. Oh, there's a slight refresh issue. And we can sort them by efficiency, and you can see, okay, this client is pretty bad. 7 succeeded jobs and 48 failed jobs and 1 aborted job. New tabs. So there's a new jobs logs 2. It's exactly the same as the main job log. So in case you want to take a look at the job log file or at one log file and a different log file of a different client, you can just open the second job log. And of course, as with all other tabs, you can move it to your second screen so you can see both job logs at the same time. The other new tab is Job Stats. Render collects a lot of information for different jobs, and you can select multiple jobs and see the total aborted total, how many times it was aborted on the cloud, um, average number of clients, the average processor speed that was rendering, the average frame time, core max usage, total times crashed, the min and max TCP traffic while rendering, total number of frames, the average output size of the frame. You have a filter so you can search for something. Okay, now to changes of the existing tabs. The job info tab has buttons to collapse sections. You can change the resolution and size of the preview images. Okay, multi-row makes no sense in this case, not enough frames. The jobs settings tab has a setting to show changed settings only, important settings only, or all options. You can search for a setting. The global info tab has now a slightly changed layout for the overall farm usage. So you can see at the moment the user render farm is using 35%, over 60% is off, some are free, some are disabled. You can enable the processor speed to some processor speed, the percentage can show or hide the table, select a section and see the exact details of the section. The last changes have been done to the job log. You already know the server's job log, which shows which frames have been sent to a machine, which have been successfully rendered, the error log, and the frame log, which is created by clients. First, there's a client stats. It shows you the time a client has rendered on the job, the number of frames a client has rendered, how many times it was sent to a client, and the maximum memory usage of the client. Then you already know the server's job log, which shows you the general information about the job, when a job was sent to a client, aborted, when the client successfully rendered a frame, and you know the frame log, which is created by a client. It contains the log file, the time per frame, the memory usage during a frame, CPU usage, and GPU usage. But there's a lot of information to look through. And what we have done, we have created, by joining the job log and frame log, a frame table. So we can add the job log only. It's sorted by frame, and you can directly see, oh, this frame was rendered twice. Okay, in this case you see aborted, but if there wouldn't be aborted, you are able to click on the open log file, and now you see why we have created a second job log tab, and you can directly open the job log and take a look why this frame did not complete successful. So this information is the server's job log, just differently sorted. We can add the client frames rendered table. If we add the client frames rendered table, then we have the maximum memory usage, CPU usage, can be stated 5 times during a frame or merged into once a frame. So you have the average usage. It states the CPU usage of other jobs or the system, number of job threads that have been rendering, the network transfer, either in speed or the total in megabytes during the frame. And the last one is the performance. It collects the information of the server job log and client job table as well, and the current status. You can see how many times the job was sent. 150 times finished successfully, 2 times it was aborted. There have been no crashes, and the rest are still running, so we don't know the status. We see the CPU usage, the highest CPU usage, which frame the client is rendering at the moment, the average CPU usage on all machines, and the average number of cores of all clients rendering the job, and the lowest CPU usage. And you can see that a user is currently logged in on that machine. The length of these process bars change with the number of cores. You can see low CPU usage is a smaller bar because this machine has 32 cores only. The high CPU usage has 56 cores, but there's at least one machine with more cores, so 58 cores is even a slightly larger process bar. Memory usage, same. You can see how much memory is used. So while the last information was the information about all clients that are currently rendering, this uses the frames rendered table and the server job log to collect information about all frames that have been rendered. At first, the frame segment time. If there would be a difference in number of frames sent to a client, you will see the number of frames here and the time a segment has taken a chunk of frames. Frame time. You see the minimum frame time, the average frame time, and maximum frame time, which frame was rendered on which machine, how many job threads have been running on the client, if a user was logged in, if it was the first frame that was sent to a client. You see the CPU usage over the frame, the CPU usage of the system, the network traffic, and the GPU usage. Same for highest CPU usage. So this is the peak. So it doesn't matter if the CPU was used just for 5 seconds at 100%, then this would state, okay, the peak usage was 100% and the number of cores. The average peak, so the peak was about 95%, and the worst peak, so this machine's Stegosaurus was only using 22 cores of its 32 cores. And you can see in this case, it idled a long time and was then not using all cores. So the idle time, the first box, indicates that it took a long time to load the scene. The CPU time used for a frame is the average CPU usage. So it's not about the peak, it's about the usage overall. So in this case, the CPU usage, 17%. You can see the peak was perhaps 90% of the CPU, but because the CPU usage was almost zero all the other time of the frame, the average usage was 17%. As you can see, the process bar scales with the number of cores as well. We have the same information for the GPU time used. In this case, it was a CPU render, so no GPU time used. And the memory usage. In this case, yeah, it's a job not using a lot of memory, so there's only 1 gigabyte of memory. Let's take a look at a different job. Okay, this job was using 43 gigabyte of memory. If you take this job, in this case, you can see the lowest memory usage was 27 gigabyte of memory. And as you can see, the progress bar is really small. The client they had only 32 gigabyte of memory. In average, the clients had 124 gigabyte of memory and used 24/7. And the highest CPU usage was 43 gigabyte on a 128 gigabyte machine. As you can see, in this case, the user icon states that for this frame, someone was logged in. For this frame, nobody was logged in. But for the average, the user icon is hatched, which means half of the machines had a user logged in and about half of the machines didn't had anybody logged in while rendering, and state the majority of the clients. So as you can see below, if 2/3 of the machines would have someone logged in, it would state the logged in icon. And if less than 1/3 had someone logged in, it would state no icon. So you know the number of machines logged in while rendering was about half, 33 to 66% of the machines. So this was the introduction for Wallrender 9, and I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, you might have already noticed this small last week image in the corner. This is not a feature of rrControl 9. It's already implemented into Wallrender 8. It's just a display of a JPEG image you have in the Wallrender folder, which updates regularly. It's called coffee image. If you remember the first webcam that was built, it was a webcam that showed the coffee machine. That's why we call it coffee image, a regular updating image. But the application that was used to create this statistic image, that will be a new feature of rrControl 9. So stay tuned for the next video. See you soon. Bye bye.